Welcome to episode 9 of the Fit2Thrive podcast. This week we are going to be looking at finding and applying our values. I hope you're all doing well. I hope you've had a good week so far and you're on with some good stuff and you're staying fit and healthy. So let's have a look at these values then. So there's a few questions that we need to ask to kind of drill down into this so we can use this in a practical way. I'd say number one is probably just generally what are values. I know they're sort of something that gets bandied around, people talk about them, but when I've asked clients or I speak to people and ask them what their values are, a lot of the time people don't necessarily know what their values are. They might know a few values or might kind of know what the word means, but do they actually understand it in terms of their lives? So let's look at that first of all. Question number one, what are values? So values are the fundamental beliefs that govern our lives, basically. They're the things that you believe are important in the way that you live, and they're the drivers of actions and influence how we treat ourselves and other people around us. Our values often determine how we prioritize things, and consciously or unconsciously, they're the measures we use to tell if our life is on track, if it's kind of going the way we want it to go. Now, when we align with our values, on the whole, life feels good and things tend to feel a lot easier and they feel less stressful. But if we neglect those, then life can feel like hard work. And a lot of the time you'll feel doubtful about the decisions you're making. So you'll feel uncertainty. And with that comes stress. And sometimes comes behavioural change as well in a negative sense. So being in line with our values can be very positive on our life. And if we aren't aligned with them or even aware of our values and we're off track of those, that can lead to quite a lot of stress in our lives. And obviously that comes with, a lot of sort of negative effects itself on our lives, on mental health and physical health. So the next question really then, question number 2 would be, where do our values actually come from? Because obviously at some point we might be aware of them consciously or unconsciously, like we said, and at some point they have to have come into our lives, and they're like a belief, a sort of an ingrained belief that kind of almost happens autonomously, and we might not even notice them coming into our lives and those beliefs or those rules that we've then start to set for ourselves. So many of our values really can be formed like when we're younger in our childhood. And the influences of family, friends, teachers, etc. Can instill personal values, partly because this obviously helps us kind of integrate into those systems, like into our family or into our school life with friends and things like that. So it helps us kind of integrate and feel part of that. So we might adopt other people's values to sort of fit in. But also because they just might resonate with us as well at a certain time, whether we meet a certain person that sort of shows those values, or we sort of see something around us, and then that kind of takes hold and we adopt that value for ourselves. So if a really obvious example, for example, is if you sort of brought up in kind of within a religion where someone might have a set kind of guide or values or rules that are already set out. An example might be, say, like the 10 Commandments, which is a sort of very famous kind of thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not do this, and thou shalt not do that. That might instill some values in us. Treat the neighbour like we want to treat ourselves. So we should treat others in the same way as we want to be treated. That might be a value that we kind of adopt from a young age. And there are loads of these different things. It might be, a sports coach that might sort of start to instill a value of, hard work is going to give you benefits in later life, for example, working hard on the sports field, being a team or part of a community, love within a family, and with friends. Different types of values can basically be passed on by different people as we move through life, and not just in our childhood either. It can actually happen as we get older as well. As we move through life, these values can also change. So they can change due to different situations that we encounter. We might have a firm value and then something happens and shifts our perspective on the world. And then that might mean that we adopt a new value because of that experience or that different person that we may have met that helps change that. One of those other things, have you ever heard the saying, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with? Obviously, that's kind of insinuating about the sort of absorption of different people's values and their behaviors. If you spend more time with those people, it starts to rub off, and you might start to behave and adopt those different values and behaviors yourself. Or there's even choose your friends carefully, right? So you spending too much time around people that are kind of not aligned with your values can either erode your values or pull you out of line and kind of into their behaviors and values as well. So either way, as I'm sure you kind of experience, behaviors can change yourself depending on the influences in your life. Those values are something that you build as you go through life. Now, parents see this in their children when other children at school sort of have a negative impact on them, and you see a child come home, they might behave differently, or their moods will change, and sort of they start to behave differently. And that's something that's really obvious. But as adults, this can also happen to us too. So the next question we really want to look at then is, what do values actually look like? What are values, and how can we kind of capture them into words, I guess, so we can kind of start to pin these down and get an idea about what values are. Now, I've got a sort of list of 10 positive values that most people would see positively, or they'd kind of adopt or want to adopt. So here's the 10. So one is certainty, which is kind of the assurance you can avoid pain and gain pleasure. Uncertainty or variety, which is like the need for the unknown, change and new stimuli. There's courage, which is obviously being brave in the face of adversity, feeling the fear but still kind of taking it on. Significance, which is like feeling unique, important or special, or sometimes just needed by people. There's also integrity, which is doing what's right and not what's easy, not compromising on what we believe. Or there's connection and love, a strong feeling of closeness or a union with someone or something. Gratitude, you hear that a lot at the minute, expressing thanks for the things that we have in our lives. In a world that's sort of becoming more and more negative, gratitude is something people are adopting as a value more and more. Or creativity, so to be innovative and create something to be better, your own, to better your own life or the lives of other people around you. And contribution is another one, a sense of service and focus on helping or giving to other people and supporting other people. So like most things in our life, it's good to have a balance of a few values and not to sort of take any of them to extremes, as they can become destructive. But our values should guide us. So, for example, we need certainty in our lives. But if we make everything in our lives predictable, then most of us would get bored. So this means we also need to have uncertainty in our lives also. So another one would be significance, right? This can feel great when you sort of achieve something and are recognised by others for achieving it, but it can be destructive if we're always searching for external approval. A good example of that is social media, people wanting to kind of really relying on likes, and there's a lot of evidence to prove now that mental health, people's kind of moods and depression and stuff are more affected by the fact they're living on that kind of external intrinsic approval, and it's not always healthy. So again, it's nice to feel significant sometimes, but if you take it too far, it can obviously go the other way and become a destructive value. Personally, I focus on sort of 4 core values to guide my decisions. Now, yours will be completely differently, but it kind of gives you an idea about how I shape my values. So mine are connection and love, which is obviously having meaningful relationships in life. I think that's a really important value. And, when they've done surveys on people's last moments before they pass on, a lot of the time, that's what they will talk about. They'll talk about experiences and the meaningful relationships they had with other people, who they'll miss, what they might have regretted in terms of missing relationships, and things like that. So for me, connection and love with my family, with my friends, with the wider community is a really important part of my life, and a lot of my decisions will be guided to make sure that I actually have that and I'm not isolating myself away from connection and love. Number 2 I have is integrity. Integrity is just doing, for me, it means doing what's right and not what's easy. So sometimes it might be easy just to kind of do something that's not necessarily morally right, or it's the easiest way of doing it, but it's not always the right thing to do. So I try, obviously I fail as well, but doing what's right, not what's easy, trying to stay true to myself and expressing myself honestly as well is a big one that I try to stick to, and that makes me happy, and I feel that means I will give the best of myself to the people around me. Number 3 for me is growth. So learning and trying to improve myself each day, that makes life exciting for me. Like constantly trying to sort of better myself. And I'm not talking about being the perfect human, because I'll never be the perfect human, but I'm always trying to grow a little bit each day. And obviously that compounding kind of growth means that, in years to come, I'll be hopefully a better, a wiser, and a person that can then move on to my next value, which is contribution. So it means I can contribute to others. I can give back to the world. It gives me so much. If I look around at what the world gives me, the opportunities, whether I'm, feel like I'm doing well or not, there's always something being given back to me, whether that's the friendship of others, whether that's the community around me, whether that's my coaches in jiu-jitsu or whatever it might be. The world is always giving back something to me. So I feel like I should always give back to it and try and inspire others to do the same, because at the end of the day, if people were more open to contribution, and less about kind of keeping these things for themselves, then in my opinion the world would be a better place. So they're the sort of 4 values: connection, love, integrity, growth and contribution, that kind of guide me, and I feel for me they work for me. So if I find that I'm feeling off track, I can ask what I'm doing, do they fit into these values, or if it doesn't, it's time to change something, right? So I can go, well, for example, I'm gone full time into Fit2Thrive, and that means I can have more connection and have more meaningful relationships with clients. It's doing what's right, not what's easy. I could just pick up a paycheck, but for me, that would be the easy option, but it's not the right thing for me, and it's not staying true to myself and expressing myself honestly. So doing this is the right thing for me, and it's also about growth and learning, trying to improve myself each day. Life is definitely more exciting doing what I do now than what I used to do. And contribution, I can absolutely contribute to other people. Our whole vision as a business and for my life is about getting people into fitness, keeping people within fitness, and making the world a healthier, fitter, happier place, because that's what it's given to me, and I want to share that with others as well. So if I feel like I'm off track, I just go back to these 4 things and I ask myself, have the decisions I've made to get myself off track come from that place? And if they haven't, it's time to make a change. I like these traits in people as well. So I want to spend time with people that also have these traits. And if they don't have these traits, I just try to spend less time with them. Now, you can't always get rid of people like that in our lives, because they might be people that are just a part of our family, for example. But I try to spend more time with people that have similar traits, because I feel obviously that's going to it's going to help me keep me happy as well. So that's what the values look like, and a kind of example of how I apply those values myself. So how do we actually find our values? Now, the list I gave you, there might be a few things on there that resonate, and you can obviously just go online and search for words again that you think are kind of align with your values. But one of the things I think is really good to do is to sort of stop and just think about different times in your life, different situations in your life where a value might pop out. So, for example, think of times when you were happiest, and what did that feel like? What kind of emotions do you have when you feel the most happy, or when you felt the most proud, or you felt really satisfied? What was happening at that time? What were you doing, and what emotions did you sort of feel around that, and why did you have those emotions? Because that's probably something that is aligning with your values. Like, stop and think about the things that are really important to you. So another good one I always think think about is maybe if you can think of, if you didn't have to work for money at all, what would you choose to do with your time? So would you volunteer at a homeless shelter, or would you spend more time with your children or grandkids, or would you take up hiking and travel the world? All of those kind of things that if you didn't have to do something or what you do in your spare time, what you fit into your spare time around your job, those things that you choose to do are probably something that are in line with your values. And when you think about that, so let's take up, for example, spending more time with your children would be one of those things. When you go back to the list of values we discussed, well, is that connection and love? Absolutely. Having meaningful relationships and developing those relationships with your family, with your kids is a massive one. And contribution, obviously, being a parent is contributing to the life of a child and how they're going to kind of grow and how they're going to, I'm trying to think of the right word, how they're going to kind of move into the world and become an adult themselves, right? We all want, as parents, we all want to make sure that our kids are going to become good people and they're going to enjoy their lives and obviously enrich the lives of others around them as well and their families when they become parents. So that's a really good way to sort of try and find your values. Think of the things that make you happy. Think of the things that you want to spend your time. You might not be able to do that at the minute, but and you might feel lost and you might feel stressed, and that might be because you aren't living within your values and kind of you're not using those to guide you. So take the time to sort of really find what those are. Now that might be something that you can do quite quickly. It might be stuff that just pops out. You might already have that list, right? But if it isn't, you're gonna have to take a bit of time to sort of drill down into those questions. What do I do in life? Why do I do it? What do I really want to do? Why do I really want to do those things? And then what sort of words pop up from that? What sort of values come from those scenarios that you're imagining yourself living? So yes, that's question 4. How do we find our values? So lastly then, let's just have a think about how do we apply our values. So I mentioned briefly sort of the way that I like to apply my values and I use them to guide my opinions. But I mean, once you've actually set your values out, I definitely recommend writing them down somewhere. That means you can kind of access them at any point, So again, if someone poses you a question and you obviously, ideally, you can memorize your values, but you might just want to go back and use them for a reference, and go, okay, well, this is an opportunity which will have an impact on, my family or my friends or my life currently, and does it actually align with my values? Is that in part of my contribution or my, or my courage? Am I being brave here, or am I kind of taking the easy option with this decision if I take it because I'm afraid of what might happen, even though I really want to do it, or am I coming from a place of significance here? Is this a decision that will kind of give me accolades, and those accolades are great, but will they really make me happy once I get there? Is that the right decision for me, or actually will it actually get me there and then I won't really be doing what I want to do? I'm just doing it for significance. So there are all those kind of questions you can start to use to guide you, so you can apply these values. So writing them down is a great way of doing it, and they're basically like rules as well, right? So you're writing down loose rules for yourself, loose guides for yourself, a way of sort of guiding your decisions in your life. So once you know these values, you can start to look more closely at your plans. You can look at your decisions and how you treat others around you and your views of the world. And at any point then, you can just reassess your current situation. You can correct anything that's pulling you off track and get you back to doing what's right for you. So applying your values is actually really simple. It's just understanding what they are and then asking yourself questions about what you're currently doing or what you might want to do or what you've done in the past, and did they align with the values that you've found? It really is that simple. And I think it's something that we don't really talk about. It's not something we're taught, but actually it's super important to kind of understand those guiding principles and how to apply them in your life. So I hope you found this useful. Obviously, if you've got any questions about that, you can contact us on our social media, Fit2Thrive, or in our community groups. Obviously, you can ask questions at any point as well. So get on those, give us a shout, ask any questions, give me feedback. I'm always looking for feedback. Maybe I've missed something. Maybe you don't agree with what I've said. That's cool too. Like any feedback would be marvelous. So until the next time, stay healthy. Bye.